Right now, as you're watching this, two Greek oil tankers are drifting in the Black Sea after being hit by drones. This isn't the first attack. It won't be the last. And what's happening in those dark waters right now isn't an isolated crisis. It's the first visible crack in something much bigger. A corridor you've never heard of is being choked. And when it collapses completely, you'll feel it in your electric bill, your grocery prices, your gas tank. The name of that corridor is the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. And it's on fire. The Black Sea isn't just a dot on a map. It's a vital artery of the global energy system. 80% of Kazakhstan's oil exports flow through there. Oil tankers carry crude that fuels Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And now, that artery is being severed, piece by piece, by swarms of drones exploding in the darkness. Since late November, attacks have intensified. Two tankers, the Kairos and the Virat, were struck while sailing toward Novorossiysk, Russia's main Black Sea terminal. Days later, another attack. Then another. The CPC terminal, responsible for over 1 million barrels of oil per day, had one of its 3 mooring points destroyed. Kazakhstan formally protested. Ukraine responded with deafening silence. And marine insurance premiums shot up 250% in 1 week. You might be thinking, another war, another crisis, another distant headline. But this isn't distant. This is directly connected to the price you pay to live, and the speed at which this is happening should terrify you. Because this time, there's no plan B, no alternative route that can absorb what's being lost. And the clock is ticking. Let's pause for a moment and understand what the CPC actually is. The Caspian Pipeline Consortium isn't just a pipeline, it's a geopolitical megastructure. A 930-mile tube that starts deep inside Kazakhstan, crosses Russian territory, and dumps oil directly into the Black Sea. It was built in the 90s, when the world still believed trade and interdependence would prevent conflicts. Today, that interdependence is the weapon itself. The CPC transports crude from 3 giant fields: Tengiz, operated by Chevron; Kashagan, a $50 billion project; and Karachaganak, which produces both oil and gas. In 2024, the pipeline moved 63 million tons of oil. 74% belong to international companies: ExxonMobil, Shell, Eni, Kazmunagas. That means when you attack the CPC, you're not just hitting Russia. You're hitting Western corporations, billion-dollar contracts, cash flows of oil giants. And you're destabilizing one of the last energy corridors still operating without direct sanctions. On November 29th, a Ukrainian naval drone destroyed single-point mooring number 2. It's a floating system where ships dock miles offshore to load oil without entering port. When you lose 1 SPM, you lose a third of export capacity. And the CPC already had SPM-3 under maintenance. Result: 2/3 of capacity offline. Kazakhstan went from exporting 1.4 million barrels per day to 800,000, half in one strike. And here's the critical point. Kazakhstan has no other route. 90% of its exports depend on Russia. 5% goes to China through a smaller pipeline. The rest leaves by rail or across the Caspian, slow and expensive routes. There's no alternative infrastructure capable of absorbing 1.4 million barrels per day. You don't build pipelines in weeks. It takes years, decades. And meanwhile, the oil sits trapped. Revenues vanish, and the global market loses 1% of daily supply. Repairs on SPM-2 will take until the second quarter of 2026. That means for the next 4 to 6 months, Kazakhstan will be operating at reduced capacity. And every day that passes, the risk of another attack increases. Because now, every tanker leaving Novorossiysk is a potential target. And here comes the second layer of collapse: insurance costs. In maritime shipping, there's something called war risk insurance. Before the attacks, you paid between 0.25 and 0.3% of the vessel's value to sail through the Black Sea. It was expensive, but viable. Today, that number jumped to 1%. In some cases, it hit 1.2. That means for a ship valued at $100 million, weekly insurance went from $250,000 to $1 million, 4 times more expensive. According to Marsh, the world's largest insurance broker, underwriters are reassessing policies daily. Before the crisis, they reviewed every 48 hours. Now it's every day. Because the risk has changed. It's no longer a distant war. It's attacks in international waters. Drones that appear from nowhere explode and vanish. And nobody knows where the next one will be. Turkey, which controls the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, the only straits connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, is starting to complain. President Erdogan said attacks on commercial vessels are unacceptable. He called meetings with Russia and Ukraine. But meetings don't stop drones. And Turkey knows it, because 3 drones have already fallen on Turkish territory. 1 was shot down near Ankara. 2 were found destroyed near Istanbul. And every time this happens, Turkey moves closer to closing or restricting traffic. If Turkey decides to tighten control over the Bosphorus, the Black Sea becomes a closed lake. And then, chaos is total. Because 80% of Ukrainian grain exports leave through there. Much of Russian oil too. And the ships carrying diesel, jet fuel, and liquefied natural gas to Europe and Asia. You close the Bosphorus, you paralyze a significant fraction of global energy trade. And markets are already feeling it. The price of CPC blend crude is frozen. Traders can't close contracts because they don't know when ships will be able to load. Buyers are seeking alternatives, but alternatives cost more. And that additional cost reflects in everything: aviation fuel, gasoline, diesel, plastics, fertilizers. This isn't unprecedented. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Arab countries cut oil supplies to the United States and Europe. It was a political embargo, and within weeks, oil prices quadrupled. Lines at gas stations, rationing, recession. The crisis lasted 5 months, but the impact lasted years. The difference is that in '73 the problem was supply versus demand. Today the problem is infrastructure versus violence. It's not a country cutting supply. It's deliberate attacks on critical corridors. And there's no OPEC that can solve this. No diplomatic agreement that stops a drone swarm. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the West imposed massive sanctions on Russian oil. And everyone expected the market to collapse. But it didn't. Because Russia found buyers: India, China, Turkey, and created the so-called shadow fleet, ghost fleets of old tankers, without insurance, without clear flags, transporting Russian oil to parallel markets. Today, those same fleets are being hunted by Ukrainian drones, and every ship that explodes is a warning. Nobody is safe. Here's the truth nobody's telling you. The last decade of cheap energy was a historical anomaly. American shale gas, Chinese solar panels at cost price, abundant oil, all of this created an illusion of stability. And now, that illusion is crumbling. The cost of transporting energy is rising, not just because of insurance, but because routes are closing. The Red Sea is under attack by Yemen's Houthis. Ships are going around Africa, adding 2 weeks and millions of dollars to costs. Now the Black Sea is becoming a war zone. And if Turkey starts restricting traffic through the Bosphorus, you lose another route. And it doesn't stop there. Inflation in energy supply. Chain costs has been rising 4% annually since 2020. Operating costs are rising 6 to 7%. This is structural. It's not a temporary spike. It's the new normal. Because labor is expensive. Equipment is expensive. And insurance is prohibitive. According to Wood Mackenzie, energy investments will drop 4% in 2026. For the first time in 5 years. After growing 41% since 2020, capital is retreating. Why? Because political risk is exceeding financial return. You invest billions in an oil field in Kazakhstan, build infrastructure, sign long-term contracts, and then, out of nowhere, a drone blows up the terminal. And your barrels are trapped. And there's another factor nobody's calculating. Demand is growing. Not from economic growth, but from artificial intelligence. Data centers consume energy like never before, and they can't stop. Doesn't matter if there's war. Doesn't matter if there's crisis. Demand for electricity is rising vertically. And electricity needs natural gas. And natural gas needs stable infrastructure. And stable infrastructure is disappearing. In Europe, gas prices fell 66% from the 2022 peak. That's good, right? Wrong. Because low prices mean less investment, less exploration, less new infrastructure. And when the next crisis comes, and it will come, there will be no capacity to respond. You don't turn gas fields on and off like a faucet. It takes years to develop. And when you need it fast, it's already too late. Here's what scares me. It's not an isolated event, it's convergence. Attacks in the Black Sea, tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, blockades in the Red Sea, sanctions on Russian oil, falling production in Venezuela, instability in Libya, and at the same time growing demand from China, India, and global data centers. Each of these points, isolated, is manageable. But together, they form a fragile system on the brink of collapse. And all it needs is a push, a bigger attack, a route closure, a wrong political decision, and the entire system freezes. Kazakhstan is losing $1 billion per month in unrealized revenues. And this is forcing the country to seek alternatives. But alternatives are limited. The route to China has capacity for only 400,000 barrels per day. It's far too little. And building new pipelines to bypass Russia would take a decade and cost tens of billions. Kazakhstan doesn't have that time, and the global market can't wait. Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps attacking, and Russia promised retaliation. Putin said he will cut off Ukraine's maritime access, and that he will target ships from countries helping Ukraine. This isn't rhetoric, it's a direct threat. And if Russia starts systematically attacking commercial vessels, the Black Sea becomes a total exclusion zone. And then, the entire chain collapses. So what does this mean for you? It means what's happening in the Black Sea isn't a distant headline. It's the harbinger of structural change. Energy prices will rise. Not tomorrow, but in the coming months, as inventories shrink and routes close. And when that happens, you'll feel it. In your electricity bill, in fuel, in food, because agriculture depends on diesel and fertilizers. Everything is connected. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. There's no quick fix. You don't replace 1 million barrels per day overnight. You don't rebuild destroyed infrastructure in weeks. And you don't stabilize a war-torn region with soft diplomacy. What we're witnessing is the beginning of an era of deliberate scarcity. Not from lack of resources, but because the corridors that transport those resources are being destroyed. And while this happens, the world keeps pretending everything is under control. But it's not. And the longer we take to recognize this, the higher the price will be. If you want to understand what comes next, pay attention. Watch the movements in the Black Sea. Observe marine insurance prices. Monitor Turkey's statements. Because these are all signals. And the signals are screaming. If this video made you see something you weren't seeing before, share it. Because this story isn't being told anywhere. And the more people understand the gravity of what's happening, the faster we can push for real solutions. Drop in the comments. Do you think the Black Sea will become the next major global energy crisis? Or is this just another chapter in a war that has no end? And if you want to dive deeper into analyses like this, subscribe to the channel, because what's coming next is even more disturbing, and you won't want to miss it. Until the next video, stay alert, because the world is changing faster than you imagine.